Welcome our guest to the stage, Jean-Bernard Lévy, Chairman and CEO of the EDF Group and Vice President of EURELECTRIC, and Magnus Hall, the President and CEO of Vattenfall. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
For joining us. Mr. Lévy, if we could start with you. Your company has set ambitious goals in terms of the strategy. Could you just give us a high-level overview of what those are?
Thank you. Good morning to everybody, and certainly with pleasure. I can say we have set our objectives. We call it CAP 2030, our general goals for what we want to achieve. Our number one ambition is to innovate for our clients. As a former monopoly, we were used for many, many years to provide all our customers with very raw offers. Everybody would have the same customer-facing proposal, and people, obviously, with decentralized energy and competition and technologic changes, technology innovations, things are radically different. So we want to be a customer-centric company, and this is moving forward very well. Our second long-term goal is to have the right balance between our renewable generation fleet and our nuclear fleet. We, of course, start with a very strong nuclear fleet. We are, I believe, still today the largest operator of nuclear reactors in the world, but we are catching up very quickly with a generation of renewables all over the world. In dozens of countries, we have a very strong presence, both in wind and solar and a few other renewable applications. And we want to rebalance our generation fleet. And our third long-term goal is our international expansion as a monopoly. Of course, once we knew, that was in, say, the mid-90s, that we were going to lose market share in France. By definition, the regulators, Vice President Šefčovič, would have, I'm sure, concur with this. The regulators' objectives is that the former monopolies will lose market share. So we have to gain market share elsewhere, and we've obviously developed our business quite significantly outside France. And today our business is for 2/3 in France and 1/3 outside France. But when you look a little deeper, almost all our non-French business is in Europe. And obviously, when you think about the world in the next 10, 15, or 30 years, demographic and economic growth will come from outside Europe, emerging markets, and we want to have a much stronger presence than the sort of 5% of non-European presence we have today. So we are also catching up quite quickly in that direction.
And have you set specific targets for reducing emissions within your company to help achieve the Paris goals, playing your part?
We do because we want to bring to the planet what we already have in France. In France, carbon emissions are extremely low due to the fact we already have a mix. I think it's very similar in Sweden, by the way, due to the fact we have a very good mix between nuclear, electricity, and renewables based on hydro mostly, but also wind and solar more and more. And today, carbon emissions coming from the electricity generation sector only account for less than 5% of total carbon emissions. So let's say, I think the country has to really focus on the 95%.
Right.
Outside France, we still have some coal-based businesses. We have decided we will not invest in any new coal generation project. And we are really targeting all our major capex, all our major investment to go towards renewables. And today we are spending a significant amount of capex to bring more renewable energy to the planet. And we have some specific goals that, including hydro, we want to double our generation capacity from 2015 to 2030.
Okay, that's great. Mr. Hall, same question for you. Give us the high-level overview of what your big strategies are.
Well, I mean, Vattenfall is also changing towards, we believe, it's the new energy market, where you will have much more renewables and where the customers are much more involved. So we have two strategies clearly going much more, and I think we are reflecting each other here, much more customer-centric and offering our customers an opportunity to become sustainable in terms of their own consumption, production, whatever comes, both for businesses and for consumers, but also for big cities, because we cooperate quite a lot with big cities as being a district heat operator. Right. Then we also want to grow in terms of renewables. That's quite clear from our perspective. We have a very, also in France, in Sweden, we have the same reflection. We have about 40% nuclear, 40% hydro, 10% bio, and 10% wind. So we are more or less climate neutral on that one. But we want to continue to grow in renewables, and mainly for us, it's offshore wind, or wind is main. There will be some solar by customers, but more on the wind side. So we have a clear target to grow that, more double it in the next 5 years. And we're spending, from our perspective, quite a lot of money, 5 billion euros in that. And we are now, we're a Northern European company. We're not going outside of Europe. We think there is, at least for us, still growth opportunities, mainly in the areas where countries want to go into more renewables like wind. And so from that perspective, we're participating now in several auctions trying to win wind operation possibilities. So we're changing, and it's a big change for a utility, because we're going from what is the traditional big size operation in terms of production and everything to much more small size, decentral. I think we're all experiencing the same thing. We were in a monopoly exactly, I think, like EDF. I think we have very much the same view on these things, trying to get our organizations going in that direction. And we have taken some significant steps in changing the company profile. And we have also, in Sweden, we have had heavy taxes on nuclear, heavy taxes on hydro because of windfall profits. They are now taken away, so we have a much better start now off in the future. And we're climate neutral by 2050, the company. But climate neutral in Sweden by 2030, and we have the same problem with transportation and industry are the two main CO2 emitters.
Yeah, and both of you have talked about being more customer-focused, customer-centric. Sounds good. Make it real for us. What specifically are you doing, and how is that making the business more efficient, reducing carbon impact?
Maybe I'll give you two examples to be more in what we really bring our clients. First one I would like to describe very quickly. We just launched a new service offering called C.E.O, which is a subsidiary of EDF. It's a new brand. You don't launch a new brand every day in companies like ours. And C.E.O will bring our clients a digitized offer based on, of course, provision of energy, but also a connected house device, and a number of services and apps around that, so that you can really have a connected home application as a whole. This is very innovative. We've developed this in startup mode inside the company. 8 months lead time, very quick, I think, very efficient. So this is the kind of new venture, new development we want to do. Another example very quickly is for our corporate clients, our enterprise clients. We now have a much stronger integration of our service company called Dalkia. Does district heating, energy efficiency, optimization services for a number of clients. And since we have acquired full control of Dalkia 2 years ago now, a little more than 2 years ago, we have done a number of things to grow Dalkia. For instance, we have acquired some new competence, not only into heating, but also into cooling, which we didn't have. And we work more and more to integrate Dalkia and the power generation offers together in order to bring our clients a holistic approach to their energy problems.
And what does it mean for you?
It means offering our customers much more opportunities to become sustainable, if you were to say that. And I think we work with our individual consumers, the B2C, then of course it's offering them the opportunity to have their own solar or running the systems that are being mentioned here, where you can actually control your own home system, or you can invest in a heat pump, which has grown quite significantly in Sweden. I think that will also, in certain parts of the market in Europe, replace gas, for instance, I think in individual homes, which is, of course, then again, an electricity possibility for us being big electricity producers. Right. And then it's also the same discussing with individual cities, because we are now we have to make sure they have very clear opinions in Berlin, Hamburg, Amsterdam on what they want to do with the future on their own sustainability, and being a partner to them is very important to us. And so we're developing programs to become, for instance, to look at coal phase out in a city of Berlin by 2030 together. We're starting discussions together with the authorities about doing that. So but the big I would say the big challenge is not to bring the people who are normally working with the customers to become more customer centric, is to have the whole organization to understand this is important, because they are the ones steering our future. And so we're really trying to bring the news back into the system to make people aware. And it's like standing up on your toes, because the customers decide and you have to be close to them to understand it, and we want to bring that back. So, but it is quite a tedious operation, I should say. It takes time, but where it succeeded, it's very invigorating, I think. Yeah, so it's positive for the whole organization. It's a brand customer centricity, but it works. It makes people more interested in the whole thing.
And what about the future of nuclear? There's still a lot of concern in places around the world about the safety of nuclear. What would you say to those people? And what are your predictions for what portion it's going to represent of the energy mix in 20, 30 years?
A growing proportion according to most observers. But let me first say, I think for both of us, and certainly for EDF as a whole, nuclear safety is the number one priority, second to none. We have to always think about nuclear safety as very demanding set of, mindset. Okay? In our minds, nuclear safety has always to be the number one priority. When I look around the world, I think more and more people in Europe and outside Europe consider nuclear is one of the solutions. It's not the only one, but it is one of the solutions when we look at all this coal, all this lignite, and also all this gas that is being burnt every day in order to provide electricity. And in many countries, we hear about even more coal generation being built, including in neighboring countries to ours. Obviously, our friends to the east have a growing coal generation fleet. Big question mark on how this is consistent with the Paris Agreement. And nuclear has to be one of the solutions. And when we look, for instance, at China, when we look at India, when we look at Brazil and many other countries, I think very deep in the minds of the political leaders is the idea that nuclear is one of the solutions, and we want to help them.
And what is your view?
Well, I certainly agree. Nuclear safety always comes first, and that goes all the way. I have my own independent operation or control organization to make sure that I get a picture of this. It's not only through the ordinary line organization, and I think this is WANO, which is the world organization, organizes all nuclear reactors in the whole world. And everybody understands that nuclear safety is the prerequisite, because just a small thing happening in one part of the world will have a repercussion in the rest of the world. We know that. And its safety is here on every agenda. And we work very close, of course, with companies like EDF being the pioneer in this part. And we have, it goes from country to country. We all know that Germany took a decision to very early phase out, mainly I would say political discussion based on some political analysis, but also, they wanted to go the other way around, and that means that they haven't been able to take their CO2 emissions down to the extent that they should have been able. Would they have done it the other way around and kept nuclear? So I think it's there for a climate solution. I think it's long-term in some countries. In Sweden, we still have a possibility to build 100% renewable system. We can survive with that, but that's not all countries have half the amount of the hydropower that we have. So it looks different from country to country. But taking into consideration the climate question, I think nuclear is very good, and I'm very happy that it takes on a new hold now, because we need a good nuclear industry.
Yeah.
Strong.
We'll go to questions in 1 second.
Yeah.
CCS Technology, you guys are getting involved in that?
Not really. We believe it's too expensive. We keep a close eye on it, but so far we don't see it paying off or being sort of. And there is also certain restrictions. We had a program in Germany where we had this lignite business that was being referred to, which we sold just briefly recently, and we built a CCS plant there to take the carbon capture to capture the carbon, but the local authorities, they didn't, or the lenders, government, they didn't allow us to do it. So I think there is also resistance and question marks around that, and also the cost of it. So perhaps it could be developed, I don't know, but it's not a big issue on our agenda for the moment.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Lévy? Yeah. Get you a microphone.
Hello, I'm Muriel Bozelli. I work for Montel News Agency. I have a question for Jean-Bernard Lévy. You said at the start of your speech that, and you said that yesterday, that you want to rebalance generation between nuclear and renewables. At the same time, in France, there is a target to reduce the nuclear share in the power mix to 50% from 75% now by 2025. It's very unclear how EDF can manage this. No one believes really in that target anymore. So I have two questions. Do you, Mr. Lévy, believe in that target? Do you think it's achievable? How will you reach this target? Especially given now that France, the French government, through its multi-year investment plan in the energy sector, has given EDF has asked EDF to come up with a plan within the next 6 months on how to achieve this target. So, of course, 6 months' time is presidential elections, so we all know what is possibly coming up. So basically, could you answer these questions, please, specifically about the 2025 target? Thanks.
Yeah, I'll have a short answer because the answer is in the question. Sorry to say. There is a regulation by a law and a decree. We have 6 months, which indeed will lead us to the end of April to provide a plan to see how we will make our generation consistent with the overall programming from the state. And of course, we will do that. I don't have to believe or not to believe, it's the law.
We have a big problem right now with French nuclear reactors, 1/3 not working. Does it say that in reality we don't really need, Ségolène Royal said this morning on Europe 1 that we wouldn't have a electricity shortage this morning. So maybe we don't need this 1/3 of nuclear reactors and maybe we're already there. I don't know, what do you think?
Maybe.
Other questions? We have time. In the back, please. Thank you. That may have been the shortest answer in history of conferences.
Hello. As a former monopoly, what is your analysis of bringing competition in the electric power sector 10 years ago? And did the consumers really gain from this change, from the price point of view, the infrastructure?
Yeah, I mean, we've had the same. We were not a monopoly before, but yeah, certainly if you look at the customers, I think it's much more related to the fact that you have regulatory issues which are surrounding the pricing environment. I think that was mentioned by Mr. Šefčovič in the previous speech. That's where we see the real development. And the energy price is, being it high or low, is a very small part of what the customers finally pay. So there are fees, taxes, and of course, this is, the people need to understand that's what really makes a difference in terms of what you pay. At least in our home country, it's a big difference now from 10, 15 years ago in terms of taxes. I think in Germany you see exactly the same thing. Probably in France, I don't know. But so it's really a political issue what people pay for their electricity. From the energy perspective, of course, competition has now brought low prices.
Yeah, I would say the same. When you look at the customer bill at the end of the day, the energy generation part of it is around 1/3. All the rest is made of networks, distribution taxes, and sales costs, and so on. And of course, the taxes have tended to increase, or the way, if it's not really technically a tax, but the fact you have to account for the subsidies to the renewables is now a big chunk of this overall bill, more in Germany, for instance, than in France, but still in France, it's quite a strong weight on customer bills. So I don't know if you can really characterize what has happened over the last 10 or 15 years as really a customer-centric approach to deregulation. I think what is going to happen now is really with more technology, with more digitization, with more decentralized energy, with more people, whether it's the customers or the municipalities and the territories, being really major players in the development of energy solutions. I think now is the time where you will see that not only deregulation, but probably the right combination of deregulation and technology and a decentralized approach will really bring more to the consumer than what we have seen today, where it's a bit artificial. We all know that.
That's great.
And we, of course, expect from the new European market design, we are in Europe here, and what Vice President Šefčovič was saying a few minutes ago, we expect this, of course, to bring us to a level where it will really be a consumer-driven regulation, and not so much a regulation driven by the will to cut the market share of the former monopolies.
That's great. Gentlemen, thank you for your time and your insights. Please join me in thanking them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Turn the stage over to Katrin.